When I was asked to come and speak at this event, part of the briefings was that to reflect on the sort of changes that cash have brought about in an organization such as the World Food Programme. And as I thought about what to speak about, the question in my mind was, well, change from what? The World Food Programme is an organization that historically has been distributing in-kind food. So sort of that took me back to my earlier days in WFP, and I started my career in WFP in Freetown, Sierra Leone. And I'm going to highlight two things that may not necessarily appear relevant, but I hope to be able to connect the dots as I speak. In Freetown, Sierra Leone, I came face to face with a telex machine. Who has worked with a telex machine in this group? Okay, and for the rest of you, you'll have to go to a museum. You'll have to go to a museum. A telex machine was our form of communication with the outside world. Telephones were very erratic, very expensive, hardly ever worked. So our contact with the outside world was with a telex machine. Big machine, little yellow ribbon that runs through it, clatters, makes a lot of noise. I can tell you that when we got a fax machine, it changed our lives quite a bit. On an assignment, on a mission once to a field assignment, I was stopped at the airport by the passport control people, and they asked me what I'm doing, and then they asked me whether I had any siblings. I was a little bit surprised, and I said, must be that my name is somehow closely linked to a name of somebody who has been doing naughty things. And so they were trying to differentiate who Tahir Noor was from possibly another Tahir by looking at the siblings. So I said, yes, I have 3 siblings, 3 sisters. And this gentleman said to me, I need their physical address. Well, 2 thoughts went through my mind. One was panic, because I didn't have a physical address anymore for my sisters. I have only an electronic one. Snail mail was something that had disappeared from my life quite a few years prior to that. The second part of it was, there's no way I'm going to give the information regarding my siblings to a complete stranger. I was protecting the information regarding my family. Cash has also brought a lot of changes in the world of World Food Programme and in the world of humanitarian assistance at large. We believe cash is a very, very powerful tool that, used in the right way, can help us achieve tremendous outcomes. And I'd really like my conversation to focus on that it's not really cash as a tool that's really important. It's that cash can enable us to achieve better outcomes, possibly even more cheaply. We can use cash to deliver nutritional outcomes. We can use cash to build resilience. That very elusive word, which somebody explained to me. The best way I've understood resilience is that it's like vaccination. It'll help you withstand shocks as you in your future. Cash can be used to address short-term hunger, chronic food hunger, and well beyond that. So when I say cash-based transfers in the world of WFP, what am I really talking about? I hope I'm just quickly to make sure that at least you understand when I say unrestricted cash, I mean unrestricted cash. People are getting access to spending power in the form of cash, and they can actually access that cash either through cards that they go through ATMs and withdraw the cash. They can be cash that they get through a mobile network operator, and they can go to the agents and collect that money. Or we talk about restricted cash or vouchers, whereby people are restricted in how they can spend that money because they have to go to a specific shop, typically contracted by ourselves or our partners, and they are typically restricted in terms of what they can buy. And so just to give you an understanding of when I talk about CBTs, typically those are the 2 we talk about. We used to have an animal called commodity vouchers, and we used to include them as part of our CBT portfolio, but we no longer do. And the link with CBT was that the actual food was received by people through market mechanisms rather than through an NGO partner, and with food being imported or bought locally and then distributed directly. But we realized that this doesn't really fit it doesn't fit the understanding of what cash is really about, because it's fixed quantities of predefined food items. So very much like in-kind assistance, it's just that the delivery modality is a little bit different. So where have we come in WFP in terms of cash-based transfers? This year we are going to distribute over probably around $1.3 billion in cash-based transfers, the two types of varieties. The budgets that have been submitted by our country offices for 2018 show a plan of cash-based transfers to the tune of $1.7 billion. Now I say that not to gloat, because as I said earlier, the idea is not that we aim to increase the use of cash as just an objective in itself, but just to show you that we have grown as an organization in using this modality. And let me sort of a little bit just juxtapose that for you. If we did if we're going to do 1.3 billion this year, in 2009 that figure was 10 million. If we supported 1 million beneficiaries in 2009 with cash-based transfers, in 2016 that was 14 million people. In 2009, cash-based transfers were being used in 10 of our country offices. Last year, and this year, it's in 56 of our country offices. So just to give you an idea of how this growth has happened in WFP. And just a few figures. 56% of that 1.3 billion is restricted cash, vouchers, and 44% of that is unrestricted cash. If we take out probably the top three of our lists in terms of the size of our operations relate to our support to the Syrian refugees. So in order to see what we're doing outside of that region, if we exclude the statistics on that, those numbers are reversed. We're doing more unrestricted cash than restricted cash. So how do I characterize this journey that WFP has been in terms of trying to move to using cash-based transfers? And 3 words or 4 words really came to mind. Excitement, fear and resistance, and plain hard work. Excitement, why? Because, well, we realize that cash offers us an opportunity to be able to provide the assistance that we're aiming to provide to people who need our support in better ways. If I go back to my Freetown days, we used to grapple with whether our food in kind should be bulgur wheat or rice. And that was sort of the extent of flexibility that we had in how we could program the resources that were given to us by our donors. And so by enabling people to be able to go out to the market and buy things like fresh foods and fresh vegetables and dairy products was sort of a quantum leap in how WFP can move from only providing dry, durable goods that can be stored for a certain length of time, etc., etc. So a huge opportunity for WFP to try to address food security problems of people in ways that are so much better in terms of what we can provide to them in terms of food. Excitement because we could see that providing cash to people, as Paul mentioned, that it provides not only that we are able to support people to meet their basic needs, but that we could see that there were some other multiplier effects, elements like financial inclusion. How could we link the purchasing power that we give to people to support local farmers in the particular area where people are being supported, and trying to see how we can further supporting the vast majority of people in developing countries are small-scale farmers, and how we can leverage the use of cash-based transfers to try to see how we could bring up small-scale farmers. Excitement because, as I mentioned, we found that in the assessments that we do prior to selecting a transfer modality, we could see that cash could be more efficient. In other words, it's less costly to deliver a certain amount of, let's say, nutritional support to people, and in some cases even more effective. In other words, for each dollar spent, you're getting better outcomes, which is exactly what we're after, right? Fear because of the unknown. We grew up as an organization in 1962 distributing in-kind food assistance. We grew in our capacities. Our organization grew and was structured based on in-kind food assistance. Cash sort of threw a wobbler in all of this, and people started wondering and fearing, why do I go to where I'm not sure what to do? I can do in-kind food assistance in my sleep. But doing cash is new. Let me not go to where I'm not particularly comfortable. Unfortunately, cash also attracts elements that relate to the fact that cash can be considered risky, much more risky than in-kind food assistance. Perceived, I would say. And I typically talk about how can we say that cash is more risky when it moves from one bank account to another bank account to a delivery instrument to the hands of the people. In-kind food that's loaded on a truck in a port in Turkey, that's delivered into a port in Freetown. Some of it disappears, some of it gets spilled, reloaded onto trucks, warehouses again and again, losses, etc., diversions. To me, much less riskier, but there are people who will debate the other way around. Still, country offices were thinking, if I start adopting cash-based transfers, I can be sure I'm going to get an audit mission next year. Why do I go to a place where I'm going to become heavily scrutinized in something that I'm not entirely comfortable with to begin with? Resistance because, as I said, an organization such as WFP had grown and was built on in-kind food assistance, and skills and experience and expertise were developed in things like shipping and transport and food procurement. All of those colleagues started looking around and saying, wait a minute, WFP is moving into cash-based transfers. Our livelihood is at risk. We're becoming dinosaurs. We're going to become redundant. Elbows up. We need to resist this. This is against our, let's say, organizational interests. Plain hard work, because as Paul mentioned, to do this business well, we had to map out a whole new business process model, factoring in the roles and responsibilities of the various functional units in WFP, and that's typically, of course, program. Finance all of a sudden had a whole new role to play in the world of cash-based transfers. It's no longer about maintaining a bank account in our country offices for our daily expenditures. It's actually about managing relationships and contracts with financial institutions, assessing those financial institutions to see whether they are capable of delivering the cash that we would like to deliver. Business process models, division of responsibilities, looking at this business process model all the way down to individual tasks, ensuring things like that there is no conflict of interest, that we are division of responsibilities, and those sort of things, to ensure that segregation of duties, to ensure that we are, from a point of view of risk, that we are doing all of the necessary things that we can do internally to ensure that the business process is tight enough and segregated enough that there are lower risks in terms of errors or of that nature. We had to develop tools and processes, and plain hard work in translating all of that into guidance materials. And a big initiative that we did was to roll out a massive training program for all our country offices. 2,700 people were trained in WFP in the period of 1 year. And that was to address the concerns that I used to hear was, but we don't know how to do it. And so we had to bring that to the table, and we had to really sort of sit with people and walk them through what this cash-based transfer business is all about. I think the numbers that I quoted earlier speak for the fact that we've sort of gotten over that hump. Somebody once asked me what were the factors, and I think some of the things that I've listed are some of those factors. But we've sort of moved on from, well, this is new to us, we don't know what to do here, this is not something that we want to venture into the fact that it's now pretty much starting to be mainstreamed in our businesses, in our country offices, and in our operations. And so for me, it's now time to sort of the push for using cash has been a really important and a good one because for those issues relating to resistance. And so this push has been a really good one. But in my view, we need to refocus now because it's not about the tools. The tools are very important and are very powerful in their own ways. In many cases, we also think that using tools in combinations might be even more powerful than thinking of it's just either in kind or cash or vouchers. Sometimes meshing them can also be a very strong option. And again, so I focus on the fact that we want to use tools not for the sake of using tools. We want to use tools that we think will achieve the objectives and the problem analysis, and therefore what we aim to achieve. We think the choice of tools has an important part to play in that, and it's not because of a donor agenda or any other idea other than that we have lots of good tools and we need to pull out the spanner when we need that, and we need to pull out a plier when we need that, etc. I'm not very good at tools. So risks. Let me touch a little bit more on this risk, and I'll come back to it a little bit more. I'll talk about it. How is the WFP positioning itself on all of this? Is that we've really very much established our strategic plan for the next 5 years around the Sustainable Development Goals. And particularly, obviously, SDG 2, ending hunger, and using SDG 17, which is strengthening the means of implementation. In other words, we've shifted our thinking from being an organization that thinks that we can do for government to being an organization that can enable governments to do. And we think that's an important distinction. We believe that governments are, and through the SDG process, have taken ownership of the problems that they're dealing with and how they are aiming to deal with them. And our role is to be a supportive role to that in ways of, one, capacity building, two, imparting the knowledge and experience and expertise that we have built as we have been implementing operations over the years. Social safety nets and social protection schemes are a clear point where we think that cash-based transfers are going to continue to have a very pivotal role to play, because many of these developing countries are establishing cash-based social safety nets. We believe that WFP can be supportive of those efforts, both in terms of less so on the actual delivery of cash. We actually don't, WFP doesn't do cash delivery. We contract banks, telephone companies to do the actual delivery of cash to people, but very much also on supporting governments in dealing with their upstream and downstream work. We have developed a lot of expertise in vulnerability assessment, in targeting, how to target people. On the downstream side, and registering people. And more that registering of people is going to become digital. We can help people, we can help governments on the downstream work. We visited a government that was doing a cash-based transfer social safety net. And when we asked on how they monitor the effects, they looked at us like, monitoring? No, we just transfer the cash and that's the end of the story. More and more there's going to be, I hope, the wish to see that the government cash social safety net systems are targeting the right people, that are achieving the right results, and WFP can play a role in that. Technology. One forecast says that there are going to be 6.1 billion smartphones by 2020. Most of that growth is going to be in non-traditional markets. I presume by 2020 they won't be called smartphones anymore, they'll be called genius phones, or I don't know. Things are moving so fast that they're going to be not like what we see at the moment, I believe. So that this technology change is opening a lot of doors for the use of cash-based transfers, not only on the delivery side, but as I mentioned, for example, the digital identity. The days of sort of registering people on spreadsheets or even handwritten, when they receive their assistance, they come and do a fingerprint, so on. Hopefully those days are gone, and we get to know a lot more about our beneficiaries through digital beneficiary information management systems. Huge opportunities. If we use even things like biometrics, we can overcome things like duplication. Somebody registered here and oh, I thought I was going to have trouble speaking for 20 minutes. I always have this problem. I never learn. But anyway, part of that is that it also generates a lot of fear in WFP, because owning that personal information, it puts a huge onus on us for protecting that data. And as mentioned, there has been already a case of where that has raised a lot of fears. In 2 minutes, I have to talk a little bit about the cash work stream. We're co-conveners with DFID on this. And the whole idea of the cash work stream that came out of the Grand Bargain and the World Humanitarian Summit was, and specifically for the cash work stream, was that really in a nutshell is that we need to fill gaps. We need to target those who are not necessarily as far along in the journey of cash-based transfers as some others are. We had a workshop in June. There's a report. If you just go look cash work stream report on the web, you'll find it. And from that workshop, we've developed quite a few action points that we're now working on. I was going to talk about, and let me talk about just the one, the synergy between the cash work stream and the other work streams. And as far as I can see, cash can almost claim a spot in any and all of those cash work streams. But I'd like to specifically highlight two things. One, that we really hope that if there is this sort of UN reform or humanitarian reform, one of the outcomes of that is a very much more closely linked development humanitarian interaction. If we are going to talk about supporting country offices and countries and governments to establish social safety nets, if one doesn't exist and we use and establish one for the response, that would be, let's say, humanitarian funded. But if we want to think about it in the long term and make that delivery mechanism part of a government social safety net system for the future, that's more on the development side. And we need to make sure that those two streams are very much more linked, and from the donor side that those budgets are much more flexible. So development, I better stop there. So much more to say.